All right, welcome to the last task in module 1. And we're going to be talking a little bit about this idea, which was part of one of the tasks that you had in the course, which is whether something, the listening activities that we use in the classroom, are they either testing, practicing, or teaching listening? And we looked at a quote by John Field in which he basically says that the methodology that we currently use to teach listening does provide a lot of practice in listening, again, exposing students to another listening text, but it doesn't really do what it's supposed to do, which is to actually teach the skill, right? It doesn't really do much in terms of improving the effectiveness of their listening or even address some of the problems that they might encounter when they are listening. So the question then is, how do we know whether the materials that we're using, the activities that we're designing, are actually teaching, testing, or practicing listening in the classroom? And that's what we kind of asked you to do when we looked at task 5. So we're going to take a look at all of these together. So we're going to look at the first one here. Students listen to an audio text, and then they have to answer a list of comprehension questions, multiple choice questions. Again, this is the pervasive type of activity that you would encounter in most published materials. And this activity actually is not doing much other than testing their comprehension. If we move on and we kind of look at the second one, we might think, well, maybe here we're teaching listening. But if you think about it, when students just have to listen to a text and see if that text matches a text that they read, you're not doing much. You're really just testing their listening. Again, you're not really teaching them how to listen. And when we move on to the third one, which is one that we've seen in a lot of other published materials, when students listen to a bunch of different flight announcements and they have to find out the time of the one that they want, you're not really doing much other than testing. One could argue that maybe you are practicing listening, but again, listening practice is something that students can do outside the classroom. If we're going to be spending time in the classroom, we should actually be spending some of this time really teaching the skill, listening in this case. In the number 4, again, I work in an EAP context, Mike works in an EAP context, and Andrew works in an EAP context. And a lot of the academic materials that we have seen is we actually have students listen to a very long and tedious lecture, and then they have to listen and take notes. My question then to you is, are we testing, teaching, or practicing listening? Well, we're practicing, as I said, because you're giving them a lot of 30 minutes is an absurd amount of time for them to actually practice their listening. But you also just testing. You don't know where comprehension broke down. You don't know what kinds of parts of the lecture, what parts of the lecture, I should say, they had problems with. So again, a lot of these activities are actually just testing and to a certain extent, practicing their listening, which brings us to the last one of these, where students are basically focusing on the language that lecturers use to signal important information and give examples. So for example, they're listening for things like, for instance, or for example, to signal important information would be something like, what this really means is, right? So these little discourse markers are very helpful when we are actually helping students develop their listening abilities. And then when students are asked to give mini lectures using those things, we are actually really teaching them listening. So what is the point that we are trying to make here? The point is very simple. And it's an obvious one, I would argue, especially because the way we treat listening in the classroom has taken a backseat. Again, as I said earlier in this course, it's being used as a vehicle to teach grammar or to teach vocabulary or to focus on the pronunciation of certain words. But when we're dealing with a particular skill, can be speaking, listening, reading, or writing, your lessons have to do more than just use the skill. They actually have to teach the skill. Fortunately, this is what this course was designed for. And we're here to encourage you to develop an approach to teaching listening that will allow you and your students to do just that. And what we hope to do in the next few modules is that we will look at a framework for teaching better listening lessons that includes some aspects of the traditional comprehension approach, but we are trying to marry that with some of the most recent research on teaching listening. So what we really hope the next few modules of the course will do is really help you understand that. And before we end the first module, I just want to let you know that the next few modules of the course, they will be broken down into activities for before, while, and after listening. And we really hope that these activities will not only help you teach better lessons with very little preparation, but also help your learners better understand the messiness of spoken English. And in addition to all of this, be equipped with listening strategies and techniques that they can easily use when they are listening on their own, outside the classroom, in the real world, or as we like to say, in the jungle or in the wild. Stay tuned for Module 2. I hope you guys are enjoying the course, and I'll see you in Module 2.